Hi, and welcome to EnviroCentre's Green Room. Meet the people on the front lines of climate action and find out what keeps them up at night. I'm Mandy, and this week we're joined by Jeff Young, Generation Engineer at Portage Power.
What climate problem keeps you up at night?
I think there's a lot of, certainly a lot to choose from. But for me, the biggest is greenhouse gas emissions leading to global warming. I think that alone has such a broad reach in terms of climate impact. I mean, we're seeing more droughts, more floods, more heat waves, more forest fires, rising sea levels. You know, there's such a long list to choose from.
What is the solution?
So this is such a huge problem. Ultimately, there's not just one solution. You know, we need to improve in so many facets of our daily life. You know, agriculture, manufacturing, transportation, electricity. For me, my career's taken me into the electricity industry, and so that's where I look for opportunities to improve. And I think we've got a big opportunity coming up with electric cars. So in 2018, the electricity sector produced about 9% of greenhouse gases in Canada, while transportation was 25%. So we have a fairly green grid to plug into for those cars, and we can really reduce emissions by moving from a gas engine to electric. So the good news is that I think we're getting close to the tipping point for adoption of the electric car. When you consider that companies are pouring money into development of electric vehicles, as well as battery technologies. I mean, even oil and gas companies are getting into the mix. They're actually buying up charging networks in Europe. In Norway last year, 54% of new vehicles purchased were electric. And in Canada, a recent poll showed that 7 out of 10 people who plan to purchase a vehicle in the next 5 years are highly likely to purchase electric or hybrid. So that alone presents a pretty significant opportunity. And in order to maximize that, we need to ensure that our grid is as green as possible, or 100% green. You know, Ontario has 30% fossil fuel generation, and Alberta about 90%. So we need to continue adopting those green technologies of hydro, solar, wind. And further to that, I think we need to add nuclear into the conversation. You know, it provides so much power and so much availability and reliability that we can count on to supplement wind and solar. And there's some modern designs out there that promise to solve the safety issues of the old designs, as well as not contribute to further nuclear waste volumes. So I think that's worth the conversation. Now, if we were able to pull all this off and go, you know, 100% electric vehicle and 100% green electric grid, that would reduce Canada's emissions by about 1/3, which is a really nice step. But when you look at that in the global context, that's really only about 0.5% of global emissions. So there's still a long ways to go, but I think it's still an important step. The more we as a developing country can take these steps and improve these technologies, the cheaper they'll become, and the more of an option they'll be for the developing world whose carbon emissions continue to increase.
That was a great answer. Thank you. Next question is, what's in the way?
I see 3 things in the way. So economics is number 1. We need the green options to be cost competitive, or even better cost than the carbon emitting alternative. In order to do that, we need further investments, further adoption, The more we implement these technologies, the cheaper they will become. And that brings me to number 2 is politics and policies. If we can set policies that promote adoption of these green technologies, that will drive innovation and reduce costs in the end. And then finally is public opinion, specifically with respect to nuclear. I mean, I mentioned in the previous question some of the advantages of nuclear and some of the new design options or features. So I think that's at least worth some consideration.
How can people help?
I think the first thing is just to continue educating themselves. I'd highly recommend the book, How to Prevent a Climate Disaster by Bill Gates. I think he does a great job at outlining, what's happening with the climate, why we need to change, and all of the technologies that are out there and areas of innovation in a very accessible way. I think also if people write into their politicians and identify that the climate is a voting issue for them, the more people are telling the politicians that they will vote according to climate policy, the more incentive they have to put the policies in place that we ultimately need. And then finally, just having conversations. I mean, just a conversation like this, I think helps promote awareness, and the more conversations and awareness there are out there, I think the better off we will be.
Great. And finally, what is the good future?
All right, quite simply, I think it's a fleet or mass adoption of electric vehicles powered by 100% green electricity.
That's it for this week's Green Room. Thanks so much for joining us as we get to the heart of climate action. You can find out more about our work and sign up for our newsletter at EnviroCentre.ca. Follow us on your favorite podcast app or subscribe on YouTube. See you next time.